radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
I need your help to get to the year 1985.
You're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
All right, welcome, Fade to Black. Bespoke radio for the masses. Yeah, man, how you doing? How you doing? Today's Wednesday, March 4th, 2020. 64 days into the new year, only 302 days left. We are live. That's right. We are live from a bunker somewhere in the middle of beautiful downtown Burbank, California. And I would like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States. Hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. This is Fade to Black for KJCR, the Game Changer Network, and KGRA, the Planet. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, March 4th, completes 5 years on the air with KGRA, the Planet. We want to thank Grace Hobbs and the entire team over at the KGRA for their support over the last and next 5. There you go. Tonight, very special guest, Richard Dolan. Richard bleepin' Dolan is back. We've got a lot to talk about tonight. Richard Dolan is one of the world's leading researchers and writers on the subject of UFOs, and he believes that they constitute the greatest mystery of our time. Richard completed his graduate work at the University of Rochester, where he studied U.S. Cold War strategy, European history, and international diplomacy. He has also studied at Alfred University and Oxford University. He is the author of UFOs and the National Security State. He also co-authored that with Bryce Zabel, AD After Disclosure, and his latest book is UFOs of the 21st Century Mind. Yes, he is allegedly writing another book, and we'll find out one day what that book is. He hosts a weekly radio show called The Richard Dolan Show on KGRA. He is currently featured on several television series and documentaries, including Ancient Aliens, Hangar One, UFO Files, and Close Encounters. In addition to his research, Richard's company, the Richard Dolan Press, publishes books by authors from around the world, and he hosts his weekly live stream hit on his YouTube channel every single week. And Richard, welcome back to the program, my friend. And how you doing?
Jimmy.
How you doing?
Doing great. Can you hear me okay?
Man, you're loud, but let me.
Let's move this down. How's this? Is this a little bit better?
See, this is, you know what, Richard? You just revealed to everybody that out of every guest that we have on this show, you're the only one we don't sound check. Because you're Richard bleepin' Dolan. And this is why we sound check. This is it.
I'm on a new, I know I'm on a temporary new mic, actually. So I've had to rig a new system. So we can do this right here. Do I sound okay to you now?
Yeah, where'd you get that mic? Walmart?
Yeah. Well, I had this guy on the corner who said he had a good deal. Told me it was good. I just have to take his word for it.
All right. Richard, let's kick it off. Let's keep the tradition going. What was the last song you listened to today?
I knew you were going to ask me that, so I had to ask Tracy. And I remember it was a kind of a neat song by Boz Scaggs. called Low Down.
Oh, that's a good one.
It's a good one.
That's a good one.
Little known fact, I'm a fan of Boz Scaggs, but he sounds in that song a bit like a group that I like even much more, which is Steely Dan. I don't know if I've ever talked with you about that, but I'm a big fan of them.
Yeah, Steely Dan or Boz Scaggs?
Steely Dan.
I'll tell you another little known fact. Boz Scaggs used to hang with Steve Miller.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and I believe Fly Like an Eagle, which is a great Steve Miller album.
Yes.
I believe Boz, the Boz is playing bass on that album.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I like Steve. I love all that 70s stuff. That's my teen years, and I'm definitely a big fan of that era in music.
Yeah, so am I. There is, when I was a kid, and we're going to get right to the UFO stuff here, and other subjects. But when I was a kid, I'm like 14 years old, and I sneak my way into a bar, okay? And on the stage is a band sound checking over in the corner. And the drummer's playing Fly Like an Eagle. Doom, 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 right? The hi-hat shuffle. And to this day, Richard, when I hear Fly Like an Eagle, I don't think of Steve Miller. I think of that dude in the bar when I was 15. And I don't even know who he is. But I'm talking about
funny
him
how
today.
memory works like that.
Yeah, it's really, really strange.
But it does that to us.
Now, let me go a little bit off topic. I want to actually start here. You are a false flag historian, and I can turn back time here. You and I were sitting out in the hot sun, and I turned to you and I said, "So what's going on?" And you said, "I'm speaking in 15 minutes." And I said, "Really? What are you speaking about?" And you go, "I don't know. I'll write it between here and the stage." And I believe I was introducing you, right? Okay. And you said, I'll think about it between here and the stage. And I thought, man, how cool is that? Right? I mean, no pressure. But you turn to me and we're walking in the building and you go, I think I'm going to do false flags. Okay, I think I've got that in my head. And I know you remember the conversation as we were walking when this happened, and I thought it was so funny. So I'm going to ask you to improv right now, and let's go a little bit off topic, but on topic, which is this. See how good your improv chops are. Coronavirus, false flag, or is this something that we need to be concerned about?
You have to be careful with how we're going to define false flags. So
That's right. That's why I hit it to you with the warm-up. Okay, so what are we doing with this?
I don't think that's the question I would ask. I would ask how. One question that we could ask is whether it's believable that it started the way that we're officially being told, which is through from a bat in a kind of outdoor market, or does that have anything to do with the bio weapons laboratory that is exactly like right there within almost a stone's throw distance? I don't know if other people believe in coincidences, but I don't think that I do, and I think that there is at least ample reason to suspect that this is manufactured. Now, that wouldn't make it a false flag. That just makes it. There could be a lot of reasons that. It could be that it got out accidentally. Someone screwed up. It could be that it was intentional. But I'm very skeptical. I just will say that it's simply a natural thing that got out due to animal transmission to humans. Now, maybe it is and maybe it isn't. We don't have all the information, but I think it's entirely likely that we should be looking at a human manufactured virus. And there's a lot of other things that I read about it that make me think that is the case. It's rapid transmission. The fact that it really does seem to like to latch on. It's highly infectious. So I don't know. I think that there are things going on here that we're not being told. False flag would indicate that this was done for an ulterior motive to maybe create laws that would otherwise not be able to be passed, pernicious laws like that and so forth. The fact that this came out of China and has closed down the Chinese economy makes me think that it is not a false flag. It makes me think that
If it's as I think it is, then it was an accident, got out, and has completely shut the Chinese economy down.
Okay, now this is where I want to jump in.
Yeah.
And when I look at, and everything that you say, and according to the media, is absolutely accurate. There's things here that feel funky, but then there's things that make it seem like it's a natural, normal thing, and certainly with China.
I don't think there's anything natural about it. I don't think this is natural, which is what the media is saying.
But
I don't think it's natural.
But this is my point. I just find it strange when I look at Iran, North Korea, and China. Iran, right? How is Iran a central player in this with 3,000 infections and 92 deaths? Where is that coming from? And
it's interesting. I mean, North Korea, I don't think we have any information.
That's what's in the middle between South Korea and China, right?
Well, a lot of transport between South Korea and China.
There is,
you don't have to go through North Korea to get to China from South Korea. So I don't know. And North Korea isn't. I mean, they have relations with China. It's true, but it's not like it was in the old days. China's very uncomfortable with North Korea, and I don't know where they are in a lot of the details. We don't know about North Korea. Now, it's true, Iran absolutely has been in the U.S. crosshairs for a long time. China, yes, but it just seems to me like there's an op. You put American operatives in the middle of Western China, but Central China to create this. I don't know.
I know.
I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's doesn't seem like it to me. It seems like this has come out of China, and plus you've now got this going to Italy. This is a global shutdown, and we're only in the very beginning stages of the economic contractions. I mean, almost a convulsion that we're likely to see. And the disease itself is, some people say it's no big deal. It's just like a flu. It is and it isn't. It's a flu that has a 3 to 4% mortality rate. So for every 100 people that get this, 3 or 4 will die, which is quite high. I mean, flus are not that lethal. Flus kill more people because they're much more widespread, but this is only just beginning. We don't really know where this thing's going to go. So, and it seems to be highly infectious.
Are you?
From everything we're hearing.
Yeah, and are you reading between the lines with the media reporting on this? Are you trying to make your own sense out of this, or are you buying what the media is selling at this point?
Well, I never. I mean, I don't know how to answer that question. I mean, if you mean the media by Western corporate media, then clearly no, absolutely not. But you have to always learn to read between the lines with what these people are saying. And really, when you get with major media, I like to study them because that's important too. And what I'm seeing in the last just day or two really is a turning where you see major media and major Western-based authorities really starting to say this is serious. And it's really hard not to when, for example, the entire nation of Italy has closed all of their schools, all of them. And I think I read that seniors are being asked to remain in quarantine within their homes because it's too dangerous. So when you have measures like that, the head of the UK's medical system, I think it was the head, said that possibly up to 80% of the residents in the UK could be infected. Admittedly, that was a high estimate, but that number was tossed out. So there's a lot of major establishment people starting to get very serious. Now, here's one thing we can definitely expect with this, that this virus will be a great opportunity for certain policies, and this is maybe where you're getting into the false flag part, for certain policies to be implemented that would not be done otherwise. So now you're hearing talk about banning cash because cash will spread germs, and digital is much more safe. Of course, everything digital can be tracked that much more easily, obviously. But you can be sure that we're going to hear more talk about maybe it's time to end cash. And vaccinations or, inoculations of any type like that, I think are going to be much more strongly pushed now, and there's just going to be no resistance. So I think there'll be other measures like that we can expect as a result of this. This is going to be it's going to have a big impact on our society, much like the aftermath of 9/11 did. I don't know if it will be as big as 9/11, but I was just out shopping with Tracy at the store, and, you could see, and we're up in Rochester. We have no cases here up in upstate New York, but you can see people, they're not yet panic buying, but they're close. So this is something that's really weighing on people's minds, and they'll be very easily manipulated. So we have to be watchful of that for sure.
I was I mentioned last night on the show that, or maybe it was on Monday, but over the weekend, I had to go to Home Depot, not to buy face masks, by the way. I went to Home Depot to buy stuff for the house. And I'm there and I'm in line. And I'm last in line. There's like 10 people in front of me. I finally get up to the cash register, and I'm up there. And I hear these two ladies behind me bickering, a little bit upset that they came there for face masks, but they were sold out. So I turn around to them, and they were both, I'm going to say, mid-60s, like right in there, 60, 65. And I said, you guys came here for face masks? Yeah, and they were sold out. And we don't know what we're going to do. And this one lady said she was a nurse. And as we're talking, I got a loud mouth, everybody can hear me, what we're talking about.
Not you.
Right. And behind them, there's like another 10 people that were in line. They all kind of lean over and they're nodding their head and they're talking. I said, wait a minute. How many of you were here today for face masks? Everybody raised their hand. And I thought, wow. Okay,
well, LA,
but this was
really a lot closer to the heart of it. I mean, LA, I think I read one of the Costco's in LA was almost like, getting really crazy with a lot of fear buying there. And I think they were selling out of a lot of things.
Well, water is Costco's bread and butter, literally, right? The Costco water. And I can only imagine what has been going on there. I haven't visited Costco in the last couple of weeks, but I'm curious as to what is going on there. Even Rita, who is very sensible and very pragmatic, came to me last week and said, so church, where's the water? What are you doing for your family? Why don't you get off your butt and go and fill up our garage? And she was,
this, but I need to ask you, your wife calls you church?
Oh man, when she's pissed. And you know what? When I get Richard, you know Rita well enough, man. You know Rita. And if she says church,
I shouldn't have interrupted.
If she says church, I snap to attention, man. I just do. I do. And but yeah. And I then turned to the two ladies. And I said, well, I'm going to be honest with you. I actually walked by the face mask section myself. Right? And I did. And the shelves were empty. And there were a couple of signs that were taped in front. We are sold out of all face masks, and we're expecting more soon. But
I don't even know how effective those are. Honestly, it's not clear to me that they're going to have much of a preventive measure with this. The real fear, the thing to be concerned about is that this has essentially shut down China's economy. They're the second largest economy in the world, as we all know. They make everything. All the supply chains start there. And a lot of them start in Wuhan, which is a huge manufacturing center in China. And that place has become a ghost town, as we all now know. And so we're in an age of just-in-time warehousing, JIT, which is simply means that warehouses don't store huge amounts of inventory anymore like they used to. They save money by having it this way. But now you've got a situation in a highly integrated global economy where we are now so integrated with each other, and that obviously includes China, that when that part of the global system shuts down, and they have shut down, then we've got to really look at how long our supply chains will last before we're going to start seeing major impacts. Now, in things like food, my understanding is that's not necessarily the biggest problem. I mean, electronics, obviously, medicine, absolutely could be a problem. Various types of other important supplies. I mean, pretty much everything. So when you have this cascading effect, starting with China, but affecting the entire East Asian market and then spreading very rapidly to Europe and the Western Hemisphere, this could be a very serious problem that could go for several months. And it's more than just stock market. I mean, if the stock market is that unstable, companies will start laying people off. And, we'll see this a very, very potentially dangerous domino effect. So that's the thing to be concerned about. And as far as stocking up, look, if things get really bad, zombie apocalypse level, well, nothing's really going to save. If you have a couple of extra rolls of toilet paper or a couple of extra cans of beans or some rice, good for you. If the system truly collapses, that's not going to save you. But hopefully it will be not that bad, and hopefully people will realize that, if this, the thing is, we've never seen this happen before. I mean, people talked about SARS, that was totally contained. This does not show the same signs of easily being contained. So it is possible that we either get a vaccine or find a way to get around this so that things don't fall apart. But as they are looking right now, China's next quarter forecast is in the tank. There's no optimism there, not in their service sector, not in their manufacturing, not in any part of their economy. So the purchasing managers, it's called, I think, the PIM, the PMI, Purchasing Manager Index. I was just reading about this because I didn't know about it. And those are all very critical, and they are bad in China. So it's something to be concerned about in terms of economic impacts, and it could last us for the year.
Yeah, I don't know of, and people need to really listen to what I'm about to say. I don't know of anything that you can purchase today, anything at all, that doesn't have some type of China component to it. No matter what it is. It may be assembled here in the United States. Parts come from China. And that goes for not only from iPhones, but it goes to Ford, Chevrolet, BMW, Mercedes. It does not matter. The airline industry, those spare parts, everything that goes into something, there's a component in there that comes from China. And I had said last month on the air that China basically does what all manufacturers do. Just in case, they've got 2 weeks of parts to ship in case of any disruption in the manufacturing process so they can continue the supply chain. But once you interrupt that 2-week thing, that globally impacts all manufacturing on this planet, period. There isn't an...
And here's the thing that it really burns some of us, like me, who through the 90s watched America voluntarily ship its entire manufacturing infrastructure to China.
That's right.
I watched, here in Rochester, I watched Eastman Kodak go poof up in smoke. But they were just one of so many U.S. manufacturers that relocated overseas. And this was a explicit decision, actually, of the George Bush Sr. presidency. It was an explicit decision of the Bill Clinton presidency. It was an explicit decision of the George W. Bush and the Barack Obama presidencies. All of them were explicitly shipping manufacturing capabilities out of this country. And it's on one hand, you can understand because companies want to make money and it's cheaper to hire low-priced, non-unionized, non-protected workers in another country. But at a certain point, did one need to go pedal to the metal, which is what we did, and now it's gone. So the manufacturing capabilities, a lot of them are gone. And if there's one thing that we hopefully can learn from this, is that maybe more centralization is not the answer, but less centralization and a return of the U.S. manufacturing infrastructure may just be the very best thing for our nation and for all nations to do the same in the long term.
I agree with that. No, I agree with that. And I had said, this is about 5 years ago, I had said that at one point, the United States manufactured nearly all of the television, invented here, right? Invented here. And everything was built here. And I said this 5 years ago, that as of today, 5 years ago, there was not one single television manufactured in the United States. And that's a hard thing to wrap your head around. You know, you think about Western Electric and telephones and these giant factories that we had all the way across this country. Like you said, Kodak, huge manufacturing capabilities. All of it is gone. And maybe if there's one good thing to come out of coronavirus is that we can wake up and go, we got to swing this back the other way. Because then it's not
really
a concern.
I think we really need to, you know, the nation state, this is getting a little afield, but, you know, there's a lot of disagreement over what nationalism is these days, and is it a good thing or a bad thing? And I have come to feel that actually the nation state is the last line of genuine, let's say, potential sovereignty of citizens. I mean, after all, you are a citizen of the United States of America, and so am I. And no, it's not like we have a whole lot of control or any control over policy direction. But, you know, the alternative to that is a transnational, corporate-dominated system in which a few banks run every single thing that there is to run through their corporations, and there are no nations. And to me, that's as insufficient a line of defense maybe as a national government would be. It's better than having nothing, in my opinion. And I like the idea of having a country. I like the idea of being a citizen in that country and having some input into how that country goes. And to me, this is why I really strongly believe in the principles of every nation to be able to govern itself as it chooses. And I really think that the United States policy was undermined for several decades in allowing key portions of infrastructure just to be shipped overseas to nations that were all too willing to have it because it was good for them, but it was not good for the United States. I think it was a big mistake.
About 3 months ago, I'm guessing here, but it was about 3 months ago, Netflix came out with this series, and it's called Pandemic, this docu-series. And I just hesitated. I didn't want to. Why? I just quite simply did not want to watch it. I didn't want the fear part. And then, of course, this happens with coronavirus. So last week, I watched the first 2 episodes, and then I couldn't watch it anymore. It absolutely played out exactly as what's happening right now. The numbers, the way that they're talking about it.
Seriously?
Yeah, it's crazy. You should just watch the first 2 episodes. It's too disturbing after that.
Do you remember I never read the book, but of course there was a miniseries of Stephen King's The Stand many years ago. Did you ever see that?
Absolutely. Read the book and saw the miniseries.
Oh, yeah. Sure, the book was good. So, well, I'll check out Pandemic if I want to have a sleepless night.
Let's take a break right here. Our guest tonight, Richard Bleepin Dolan. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. We'll be right back after this short break. We'll get straight into, you guessed it, UFOs. Is it UAPs? What are we doing here, Richard? Is it UFOs, UAPs?
Go a little back and forth on that. I still like UFO.
So do I. We'll be right back. We're going to talk flying saucers. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. Tonight, Richard Bleepin Dolan. Tomorrow night, Quitspiracy Part 2 with Jason Quitt. We've got 2 events coming up, both with Richard Dolan. We've got Contact in the Desert, May 29th through June 1st in Palm Springs, Indian Wells, California. You can go to contactinthedesert.com for tickets and info. And Richard and I are also winging it over to the United Kingdom, June 26th and 27th for the Awakening Conference over in Manchester. And you can go to awakeningufo.com for tickets and info there. Richard, okay, let's kick things off.
I want to say one more thing.
Sure.
One more thing from the last segment.
Sure.
Relating to one of the repercussions of this coronavirus, I really think it's important to stress, like, we're going to see if this is a false flag or not. I think it's really a case of opportunism that governments around the world will take to use this virus as a way to strengthen a lot of centralized surveillance and control laws that I'm sure they are rubbing their hands together wanting to implement. So I think that we can expect. I kind of alluded to that before, but I just think it's an important point to stress.
Yeah, I'm just trying to look at this with 3D lenses here. You know, I'm just trying to figure it out. The narrative that's being presented by the media is one thing, and then there is everything else that is in play with these global implications and what can be pushed into play because of that. And I'm wondering also, is there a punishment issue that's being laid down on Iran? And I know that's going far conspiracy, going deep into it. But it just feels weird to me, Richard. It just does.
No, I mean, look, the U.S. has had Iran in its crosshairs for a long time, and look, it's possible. I mean, we don't really know all of the behind-the-scenes activities that are going on there. So, is it possible that someone intentionally brought that virus to Iran to spread it around? Hey, your guess is as good as mine. I would not rule it out. But I just don't know of any evidence or anything pointing to that yet.
No, there isn't. There isn't. Last week when I had read one of Khomeini's top advisors died of coronavirus, and I was like,
yeah, okay. That's right.
I was like, oh man. Okay. All right. I actually want to discuss a subject that I've been talking about this week, and I was excited to have you on to talk about this, which is how much weight do you put into, and it could be it doesn't matter, okay? I'm not talking about anything specific, but how much weight do you put into a UFO photograph?
By itself,
yes.
Almost none.
Almost
By
none.
Itself, almost none.
And I have to ask why.
Because it's a form of evidence that requires corroboration. So I would say by itself, without a story. I guess one thing you could do with a photograph, especially with contemporary digital photography, is study the metadata. So that would be useful. Okay. Timestamps, location, GPS, and so forth. I mean. So I'll rephrase that, and I will say almost nothing or very little. Photograph by itself. I mean, and I say this because there are so many UFO photographs that are out there. And, people just don't know what to do with them. I mean, every now and then you'll get a photograph that gets some very good analysis by someone who's technically competent. And even that, like, what does that really do in terms of moving the conversation forward? So I think, if you have a hierarchy, photographs are kind of low. In fact, I would almost say good witness testimony is probably more useful than even a photograph. And then there's video. In theory, there would be audio, although there's almost never audio. There's a little bit of audio of UFOs, not much. Hard to know what to do with that. So I think what you need is a combination of photographic evidence plus really good testimony that can be investigated to some extent. I mean, photographs definitely have their place, but by themselves, I just don't, I would like them to be more powerful than they are, but in practice, there's just so many of them. And it's so easy. I mean, it is really, I don't want to say easy, but it's not impossible. It's not difficult to fake these. And for a lot of people, it is very easy to fake them.
And that's why, in listening to your response, it's a touchy subject, right? It's a very, very touchy subject. So many people present their photographs, or they're emotionally connected to some of the images out there that have been there for years. And then to turn around, because I'm in your camp here. I'm in your camp, and I look at things all the time. And then I go back to something like the Rex Heflin photographs, which were Polaroids, which were taken down in Santa Ana in the mid-'60s. Yeah. And those photographs are what brought me into ufology in the 60s. So I'm emotionally connected to those. So I don't want to be a hypocrite. I like
those photographs. Personally, I actually think that they are good evidence. There have been a number of attempts over the years to discredit those photographs, and I don't think that they've succeeded. And there have been some very spirited and good defenses of the validity of those photographs. So I think that they stand. That was from 1965.
Yeah, absolutely. Polaroid too, as well, which brings in another element to this now, which leads me to my next question, which you started to go into. How much weight do you put into eyewitness testimony without photographs, without any evidence to back it up, but all you have is the eyewitness accounts?
Well, we're in a judgment area here, but if you're doing an actual investigation, pretend you're a police officer or pretend you're an investigator that's investigating a crime. You know, you have different types of witnesses. You have different types of people that you're going to speak to, and you have to use your judgment. Like, that's the thing. This isn't like a math equation where if you just have all the right variables and you plug them in, then it spits out the right answer. Like, it doesn't work like that. So we're in a position where we, as hopefully mature, intelligent adults, are able to assess people. And even that's never 100%, of course. But the fact is you just do your best. And so when a witness, when someone is a witness to a UFO, the thing that I do, and I've now at this point, I've spoken to quite a few UFO witnesses. The main thing you do is you listen, you ask hopefully relevant questions, and you get them to expand on it with as much detail as possible. And you make your judgment. In my opinion, I think a good, carefully measured testimony of a witness that I trust, okay, that's saying a lot, but that counts a lot more than a random photograph that's sent my way through email, for sure.
There is a great example of this would be, and I don't want to beleaguer this, we don't have to go back and recount these events, but you and I saw something strange in the sky one night. We're together.
Yes, we did.
Pretty hard to explain. It was a lot of fun. There was a lot of crazy language that was shouted out loud as we watched this. Yes. But we didn't have pictures, right? All we have is our story. Right?
That's right.
And when you and I go and recount this with others, well, we want people to have open ears to what we are saying, just like we need to have open ears with other witnesses, because our sighting has the same weight as somebody else and needs to be considered. And isn't that how we need to approach this?
Yes. Although, I mean, in practice, you know, I'm sure with you as well, all kinds of people will come to you with a story. And I mean, the reality is that not everyone has equal credibility when they come to you or when they come to me. And that's just the reality. Mm-hmm. So there are people who don't inspire my confidence for whatever reason. And there are people who do inspire my confidence. And, you know, I'm not going to be tricked or shamed into saying, oh, everyone's equal and everyone's testimony is the same, because it isn't true. Not everyone's testimony is of equal value. So I will definitely rate certain types of witnesses as intrinsically more reliable than others. And I suspect that we all do that. Having said that, I mean, anyone who's got a sighting, no matter who they are or where they're from, yeah, I will listen to them. And I actually always listen to someone's UFO story, because I really do want to hear them all. When someone comes up to me, I want to know if they've seen something unusual. I want to know what they've seen or experienced. I'll say this: most people that I've encountered, no matter what their background, no matter what their situation, I would say most people who have UFO stories to me tend to be believable. I have encountered people who have definitely lied, that I know have lied to me, but they're a minority. They're a very small number of people. In my view, most people who have told me what they've told me have been on the level. You know, for many years, I had an office where I just wrote professional resumes for people. I met with thousands of people one-on-one, and I sat with them. I talked about their background with them. I made them look good on paper, you know, hopefully within the boundaries of truth. And they would see one of my walls, which was filled with UFO books and conspiracy books. And so lots of people, hundreds, would volunteer their UFO sightings to me. I didn't ask for them. And I would have to say, like, the vast, vast majority of those people were totally believable. And I think you or anyone listening would believe those people as readily as I did when you hear their stories. Some had a lot of detail, some did not have a lot of detail. But overall, I would say that they were credible individuals.
What do we do with an eyewitness, maybe even an author of their account or whatever? I'm just being very broad here. Mm-hmm. That their story changes and gets more elaborate, and you go and you go back and cross-reference your own thoughts or your own conversations or your own things that you read, and you go back and say, well, wait a minute, the story's a little bit different today than it was back then. I don't know what to do with this now. And this happens to me all the time.
That's always a red flag.
Right.
That's a huge red flag.
It is.
And now, does it mean that the whole story is false? It might. I mean, you know, it all depends on the specifics, but it could mean that they just like the attention and they are getting attention and they feel important. The reality is that people often do feel important and they like it.
Yeah, exactly. And at that point, do you check out? You know what I mean? Do you just back off on your connection or your?
Usually, yeah. Usually, I would. Like if I find that someone does that, if they do anything that's going to make me doubt the 100% absolute sincerity of what they're telling me, I'm probably going to be gone. I probably just won't waste my time.
I find myself doing that, and in a lot of ways, I feel
people.
Yeah, I feel heartbroken too as well because I have invested time and maybe even some emotion.
People have to understand when they come up to a UFO researcher, let alone someone who has a high public profile like you do or like I do, who is busy. I mean, that's the reality. And people still will come up to me and they will want my time because they have a story that they need to tell me, they feel. And it's tough for me. Like, it's really hard for me. They have, I don't think people realize the thousands and thousands of attempts that I get to reach me all the time. And I'm sure this is the case with you. So now, having said that, I still want to hear a good UFO account. So I'm always willing to listen, but if someone is jerking me around even the slightest, or the thing that actually will actually turn me away is someone who comes to me and says, you need to hear this. I have solved this element of this mystery, and you need to hear my solution. That's a really sure way to get me just to walk in the other direction. Like, I don't have time for that.
Well, I was just going to tell you I've got it all figured out. Did you want to hear?
Not really.
Oh, man. And
if you have it all figured out.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, I've got it all figured out. Is now, okay. And the reason why I'm setting all of this up, there's a lot to discuss tonight. And moving in this direction, you are not only a UFO historian, but you're a world historian. You're an international historian, the United States and history. That is what makes you tick. You go back and you look at the historical record not only in UFOs, but then you correlate that with history in general. And that is
it's
one of the
obsession.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's your obsession, and that's one of the things that we admire about you, is because you can connect these dots, and you've got a memory because of the research and studying that you have done over the years. That being said, that is why I'm setting this up. You can't, others out there going back, 15, 20, 30, 40 years, you can't change your story. There are people out there that remember the past. There are people out there that study history. And once you falter or waver, people will check out and people will start to look the other way. And I think that's what's important here. And I'm bringing this up because of some of the things that you are focusing on now is you are looking at the past. You are looking at previous cases in the historical record that you think are important that may have been lost in time, and you're starting to bring that forward.
Oh, yeah.
And so
Have you been checking out our YouTube channel?
and well, I'm always the Dolan stalker. I'm in the background.
Yeah.
I do that. But why for you are you bringing these cases from the past forward now into the community? What's the intention here?
Couple of things going on there. Yeah. So, like, for example, Tracy and I just did a live stream yesterday on some of the old crash retrieval stories brought out by the late Leonard Stringfield back in the 1970s. And they're really important. So there's a couple of reasons. It's my obsession with and respect for the past of ufology. Like, I have a very high regard for those people. They were pioneers, and the work that they've done, it just seems to me that no one else really is talking about them. Like, I don't hear anyone talking about Leonard Stringfield. And to me, that's a shame. His work was so important to the development of the study of UFOs, and particularly the whole understanding of what crash retrievals of UFOs are all about. And that gets me to that whole thing. I have come to believe that understanding, that these objects have come down and have been retrieved and have been studied is of such absolute paramount significance. And yes, UFO researchers have been talking about this for a long time, but here we are now in the era of organizations like TTSA. And look, there's a great deal of support that I have given them and will continue to give them because I believe in the work that they are doing. But when you continue to put out this convenient fiction of, oh, well, we don't know what these objects are. They could be anyone's. They could be Chinese for all we know, or Russian. Then I'm going to call BS. And we all know that that's what no one believes. No one believes that. They don't believe it, and no one else believes it. And the real situation is that these objects have been recovered. And that's the unspoken, open secret. It's such an open secret that it's not even a secret anymore. So I think that understanding that there's a reality to these recoveries of these UFOs is critically important. And when Tracy and I did a thing on Stringfield, yet again, we've actually done a few on Stringfield, I feel it's really important. The excellent testimonies that he obtained in the 1970s and 80s are of paramount importance. And I just don't want people to forget them. So I think it's a good opportunity for us on the YouTube show to get into it. And I was really happy that we did the one last night. I was very pleased with it. But I do a lot of this type of thing. Like, I really think bringing out these old cases is very important. And one other reason that I like these old cases, because we've got a pretty good idea of, leading edge technology of, say, 1950. I mean, relatively, it's been 60, 70 years since that. And so when you've got stories of objects instantly accelerating back then and traveling at multiple thousands of miles per hour back then, some of which look kind of like a tic-tac back in 1950, then we've got a real problem to deal with. So we've got historical cases that are so difficult. Like, it's one thing to say, oh, black budget, advanced tech in 2020 or even 2004, But to say in 1950 that we had things that were moving in such a way, that's a real stretch. So that, for me, makes the old UFO reports really important for us to understand and to recognize that the people who are making those reports, who are observing these things, often did it with highly sophisticated instrumentation and were outstanding witnesses in their own right. So that's why I think those early cases are important, and I just don't think it's wise to let them go.
And a lot of the research, if not all of it, was done in the physical analog sense, right? Where you are, you're traveling, you have to go on site, you have to interview witnesses firsthand. Obviously, you're not jumping on the internet and doing no. You have to go and get the research done, and it's bona fide is the analog word that I'm looking for here, because that's what you get from these old cases.
Yeah, exactly. So, no, they did. There was a lot of legwork and groundwork. One thing that you find when you look at these old UFO organizations like NICAP or APRO is they actually were really well staffed. There was a lot of volunteers engaging in this type of research at the time. I mean, there's MUFON today, but I really get the sense that these organizations of the 50s and 60s, I think, had more people actively on the ground doing genuine investigation of UFO cases probably than we have today.
And I did the same thing. Well, I still do it. But growing up, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, when I was going through as much UFO documentation as I could find, I would go and look at these old crash retrieval cases and stories around the country, knowing that, and even if you go back far enough, I hadn't even heard of Roswell at one point. It hadn't surfaced yet.
Yeah.
And, but there was these other cases that you can go and read about crash retrievals and people that were speaking about it. And I was completely intrigued. You and I were talking about this a couple of weeks ago on the phone. And, bouncing these old cases back and forth. And I have, and still, a genuine interest on these. And I think there's a lot of importance there. And they have been forgotten. And I can't believe that I'm using these words, but
let me just add this. We all know about Roswell. And it's funny, people say, I'm sick and tired of hearing about Roswell. I think, the reason that we talk about Roswell so much is that it really was an anomaly. It was an anomaly, not that an object came down. It was an anomaly that it was reported at all in the media when it happened. And yes, it was retracted right away, but it was reported. And that makes Roswell different from every other crash retrieval that you can think about. The fact is, it looks like there have been many crash retrievals. And this is why I think Stringfield's work was so important. For about 15 years, he was quite active in ferreting these out until the early 90s. And there seems to have been a lot of them, and people are incredulous. Why would UFOs crash? They fly all the way here from another galaxy. Well, maybe they're not flying from another galaxy. Maybe they live here, and maybe they've got their own infrastructure here. Maybe sometimes they go off-world. Yes, I think that's true. But maybe they've got a lot going on here, and they go from one underground mountain facility to another, and who the heck knows? I mean, it could be that there is a secret war going on. It could be that there's shoot-downs occurring. It could be that there are other kinds of problems that we are not aware of. It's very likely that they're not infallible. And so, yes, they have come down. And I don't think that they're coming down in from deep space. I think they're coming down from one location on Earth on their way to another.
Let's take our break right here, Richard. Stay right there. This is Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. That's right. Tonight it's Richard Bleepin' Dolan. We'll continue the conversation right after this short break. Stay with us on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. Stay with us. Welcome back, Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Richard Dolan is with us. We'll pick up the conversation in a second, but if you have missed a live show, it's simple. Just get our podcast. You can subscribe right now for just $2 per month. Go to jimmychurchradio.com, click on that podcast banner. We have almost 1,200 archived shows right there. Richard, 1,200.
My God, man. That's a lot of shows. That's a lot of hours.
That is a lot of hours.
And, seriously, Jimmy, well done. That's a lot of work, and you deserve the success. You do a great interview, not just of me, but everyone who goes on your show. I think you have this knack of getting really interesting and good information out of them. And boy, do I know, like you get things out of me that no one else does in terms of interviews. Like you just get me to talk about things that I would never discuss anywhere else.
Now watch what I'm about to do now.
Well, now that you have 30 minutes to go, since
Oh man, Richard, don't make me do it. Don't make me do it live on the air. Okay. Let's. If only we would disclose the events of today in our conversation. But nonetheless, we were talking a couple of weeks ago about crash retrievals, and during that conversation, after I hung up the phone, and we talked for quite a bit actually, and after I hung up the phone, our conversation continued in my head. Actually, and you actually texted me after that to continue the conversation via text. And but this was the weird thing. I'm going to lay this out there for you. Is this? I had mentioned to you, because we were talking about crash retrievals, and I said that's interesting that you bring that up, Richard, because last month on the show, Jacques Vallée was on. And Jacques mentioned in passing, as I asked him to reveal some ultimate secret before he leaves planet Earth, what that would be. And one of the things that he said, and he just slipped it in, was that, first thing is, of course, our government has retrieved crashed craft. Yeah. And then he continued on with the sentence, and it stopped me dead in my tracks. And never before, to my memory, has Jacques ever said anything like this directly. Many have pushed him for some type of direct response, but there it was. He laid it out there. But this is what is curious to me. We've been going through the Wilson Davis documents and observing these, looking at the text and picking through this. It's a very interesting document that is real. And one of the focuses on this document is crash retrievals. And
the primary focus.
Right. And after we hung up and I started to think about this, is this some type of confirmation where we are able to connect the dots? And for you, after I, spoke to you about Jacques, and we were also talking about the Wilson Davis doc, did you also come to that same conclusion? When you hear something like that from Jacques, what goes through your mind when we're talking about crash retrievals?
Well, here's the thing. Jacques Vallée is in the same crowd as all the other people who have also talked about the validity and reality of crash retrievals, from Eric Davis to Hal Puthoff talking about the metamaterial. I'm not saying it's extraterrestrial, but let's just say it's extraterrestrial, like that whole thing, which is what he has done when he's talked about that, to people like Robert Bigelow, who has he hasn't explicitly talked about crash retrievals, although he's known to house the various artifacts, but Bigelow has been very upfront about the reality of ET here on Earth. The late Edgar Mitchell, with whom I personally spoke about crash retrievals and the acquisition of alien bodies. So they're all part of the same group. Vallée is part of that. They're all close friends. They've all had different types of security clearances. You can count Dr. Kit Green in with that as well. They've all made different types of statements. All right, but they're all very much along the same piece, that this reality, that crash retrievals are a reality. So in that sense, it is not a surprise to me at all that Jacques Vallée would say it. The only surprise is that, yes, he went a little bit further now in actually saying this publicly, but there's no question in my mind that he's known this for a long while. Absolutely not. It's an open secret, and I want these people to come out more, and I don't think that they will. I've actually tried prodding them myself, and that's not getting me anywhere.
And what do we do with that, Richard? I mean, not to be morose, all right? I don't want to have that vibe on this broadcast. Right. But the cycle of life is part of nature and is reality. Okay, that's just the way that it is.
Yeah, right. They won't be here forever. All those people are getting on.
That's right. That's right.
Edgar Mitchell's already gone. We lost him a couple of years ago, and he's one of them. So they have known something that's very important. The problem is they've all got significant security clearances, or at least most of them do, and so the things that they know, they absolutely do not feel that they're able to talk about this without blowing their security clearances, and they're not willing to do that. And I wish that they would. Honestly, I would like for them to do it, but you can't force these people to. And Wilson's never going to own up to that document. Eric Davis should own up to it, but he hasn't yet. Maybe he will. I can tell you this: there's some very excellent, quiet research being done on this right now. Like, this is not over in this document. And the thing is, everyone who's looked into it with half a brain knows that it's real, knows that it's legitimate, knows it was a genuine conversation between Eric Davis and Thomas Wilson, in which Admiral Wilson said to him back in 2002, yes, I tried and failed to get access to the ET reverse engineering program. I was denied access by the three gatekeepers, that is the managers of the private corporations special access program under the protection of the U.S. government. Yeah, all of that I failed. That it was an intact flying saucer. They said to me that it was way, way beyond us, and they said to me that progress was painfully slow in understanding it, all of this. So that conversation happened. Now, we can argue over the details of, did Wilson get it all right? Did the people he was talking to tell him everything that was true, or did they lie to him in certain things, or whatever? All of that's fair. But the fact that Davis and Wilson had this conversation, I don't think any rational person can doubt that at this point. And as I say, there is very good and serious work being done on this right now. So I think there'll be much, much more for people to chew on before much longer.
Why did we need to circle back because I want to finish your statement there. But why hasn't the mainstream media, like Fox, picked up on the Wilson Davis document like they have on other very significant things lately, and this document comes along, and it's largely ignored.
Fox has come much farther along than any of the other national networks, certainly farther than CNN or MSNBC or the others. Like Fox with Tucker Carlson has actually gone much farther and has had a much more adult level conversation about this than anyone else. I mean, it was Carlson who actually got Luis Elizondo to say on national TV that there were crash retrievals in the possession of the U.S. government of UFOs. That was an unbelievable statement at the very end of May of 2019.
Sure.
It was astonishing.
Sure, but so what are you suggesting, that if TTSA had released the Wilson Davis docs, then there would be attention paid to it by Tucker Carlson? And I'm being very serious.
I think probably.
Yes, I'm being very serious in that statement.
I think he probably would, actually. That's a good question. I don't know for sure, but the problem with the Wilson Davis document at this point is that Wilson's not owning it and Davis is not owning it. So, and the media is just they don't want the hassle. I mean, the media is what part of our major media is really about reporting genuine news? I mean, really, what part of it? A tiny part, maybe some of it, relating to this subject of UFOs. They have moved a long way. It's true. Like, they've moved to a direction in the last 2 years that I think all of us are astonished by where they've come to. But most of the media has really kind of stopped on this, or they've really, it's down to kind of semi-major, semi-mainstream, articles in Popular Mechanics. Yes, that's valuable. Not a lot of national TV coverage, though. Some, mostly on Carlson's show, not much else. So I think the Wilson Davis document, once a major analytical study is able to come out on this, which I think it will, because I am aware of this, then I think that it is very likely to get some media attention. But that may not be enough either. I mean, never underestimate the power of the corporate media establishment to try to bury anything. They're always good at that. So we'll see. It's a different attitude now with UFOs or UAP than it used to be. But still, it's a very limited sort of a thing. I mean, they're still in kindergarten level here. We're still at the point where they have this fiction of not knowing necessarily what these things are, that the government's scratching its head and not knowing what it is. And that's just absolute nonsense. So anyone who's looked at this subject long enough realizes that the United States military and deep clandestine special access programs that are what I call legal illegality in their structure, they have got this. And the problem that we have, though, is getting at this technology now. It looks to me, when you study the Wilson Davis notes, that document, what becomes clear is that even among U.S. government, responsible U.S. government military officials, it's not clear who really has access to this information more than the smallest handful of individuals. And that the power over this is not within the government anyway. The power over this actually appears to be within private industry. Because guess what? That's where the money is. That's where the brain power is. That's where the scientists are. And so, and also when the secret is privatized, like it is, then it's much more impervious to freedom of information requests. So it's win-win for those guys. And that is the problem that we as a society have now, is how do we find a way to break through that legal illegality? Because it is morally and constitutionally illegal, but they've got this legal veneer of protection over their secrecy.
Well, when
which, by the way, they're profiting off of immensely.
That's right. And when you are, again, not to be morose, but if you are 75 or 80 years old and you're sitting on real information, who gives a crap about an NDA or a security oath at that point?
Well, you think so? I mean, I've raised this issue, all right, and I got nowhere with it. I've raised it, I get nowhere, and the answer is, well, I don't really even get a full answer. It's just like, no, can't do it. So now, one time I had a communication with Edgar Mitchell about 14 years ago. In fact, it was in the aftermath of when I first learned about the Wilson Davis notes. So that was in late 2006 when that happened. So almost 14 years ago. And I asked Edgar Mitchell, to just throw me a bone here, essentially. I said, look, I know you told me you like the work that I do. So if you like the work I do, can you help me a little bit in giving me some guidance as to how you have learned about the existence of alien bodies and alien tech, which you told me about? Can you point me in a direction? Can you give me a name? And he said to me, the people who came to me did so at great risk, professionally, personally, and to their families. And I cannot reveal their identities as long as they're alive. That's exactly what he said to me. So that implies, these NDAs, it's not simply they'll throw you into Leavenworth. There are other repercussions that these people are worried about, and that might include risk to their families. And no matter how old you are, if you're 75 or 85, it doesn't matter if someone's threatening your family. If that is so, I don't know. But if that were the case, that would be enough to sway most people to play ball.
Well, maybe you and I can help sway them by just suggesting this thought, which is, do you want your legacy to be the guy that, or girl or woman that took your secrets to the grave, Or do you want your legacy to be that you brought this, you changed history, right? That you brought this to the planet.
I know. But the thing is, well, there's another possibility, which is that they really may not have all the answers. Like, I'm speaking of the people connected to the Bigelow Group, TTSA, and so forth. Like, my sense, and this is only my sense, so I don't want anyone to misunderstand me here, is that they know a lot. They've had a lot that's confirmed, but it's quite possible that they're not at the level of Holy Grail either. And it could very well be that these people want greater access, and that, maybe they're thinking if they play their cards right, they'll get that access. There's always more. Like, when you're in that game, you never have enough. And if you don't have everything, you want more. So it's quite possible that that's a motivation for some of these people. I really don't know. Like, I learned some things, and there's a lot that I don't know.
Well, I know that you support TTSA in their efforts to the Stars Academy.
I support the release of genuine UFO data, and they have done more in that regard than most organizations and people have done in a long time. So, yeah.
But it also, I mean, do you think that they've run out of gas, that they might have missed an opportunity here?
Yeah.
When this momentum was what it was, and it was tremendous, especially we go back 2 years ago, and it was a different world, man. It was a lot of fun.
Their game is to work with members of Congress and the government. So I don't know how good their momentum was back then. Their momentum with the UFO community was pretty good, but how significant and influential is the UFO community is a really good question to ask. Have they run out of gas? That's a definite possibility, and I think some of those members would be right on board to tell you that same thing. Like, they got a couple of videos released that was a nice score, like a really nice score to get those 3 videos out. And then the Navy encounters of 2014, 2015, which they clearly had a lot to do with that. Those were really significant. The question is, can they pull any of the rabbits out of the hat? Or, because what you have within the Pentagon, it's obvious to me, I don't know how many other people it's obvious to, is that there's a war going on within the Pentagon over this. Or let's just say a skirmish where TDSA has had their supporters and they have their enemies. Like, they clearly have their enemies, and you've seen this all throughout 2019 and some of the various Pentagon statements against Luis Elizondo, for example. He wasn't part of ATIP and all of this nonsense, none of which was true. But there was a concerted effort against him. That much was obvious. So it's a power play that's going on there. So clearly there are people within the Pentagon who support some effort to get this information out. And why wouldn't there be, by the way? And there would also be factions to oppose it. And why wouldn't there be those? So I think that's what we're seeing. And it's entirely possible that, 3-4 years from now, we'll all look back and say, remember when TTSA was out there going full guns? And everyone was throwing rotten tomatoes at them, telling them to get out of town. Like, that's what the conversation will probably be. How we eat our own.
Right. And could it be that it is a genuine missed opportunity on TTSA's part to not only keep their foot on the gas, but if they've got another situation like the Tic Tac,
what can they do?
That's what I'm saying.
Actually, what if they have nothing left?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's like keeping your foot on the gas, like if you're able to. But so they've got this deal with the Army now, which is studying the metamaterial. I think that's interesting, actually. And I don't know all the details of that. Like, if the Army finds something that's of national security importance, are they just going to be able to take the metamaterial away? Like, who knows? Maybe. But what you clearly can see they're trying to do is they're trying to find a lab that can generate the proper type of presumably terahertz radiation that is necessary to test that highly unusual artifact, which, by the way, let's just give Linda Moulton Howe credit. She held that for years and was the caretaker of that and shopped it around to scientists for years, including Hal Puthoff and others. But anyway, the point is, if they can get a lab to study this and come up with something then that's to their benefit. Like, they're having a hell of a time trying to find anyone who's able to study this thing because it's so difficult. It's so unusual. So, but other than that, like, what do they have? Like, they've got the ability to, through very capable people like Christopher Mellon, to talk to members of Congress and to try to get backdoor channels open, to have a conversation among very fearful politicians who do not want to touch this subject, like, at all, trying and usually not really succeeding as much as they want to stir up media attention. I mean, for the amount of information that they put out in the last year, very little, really. I mean, some, but little has resonated with the larger media for more than a day or two, and then it just goes away. So I think that they're in some tough straits, and I would like to see them succeed with what they're trying to do. I think it's been reprehensible to see how some individuals in the community have been accusing them of engaging in some kind of disinfo op and all of this nonsense with no evidence, zero evidence. We're in this postmodern upside down world where you judge someone not based on what they say or do, but based on who you think they are and what you think their motivations are. To me, that's absolutely the worst and wrong way to go about doing this. You know, we have to understand what people are saying and doing before you understand what you think their motivations are. Like, it's just getting everything backwards the way people have done it.
Well, there's no
So
question.
I want to hear what they have to say.
Yeah, there's no question about that. And we are in a cancel culture, and that part of it is real. And then just when, you know, these pretty big personalities and things that surfaced over the last couple of years, and you know, how could it get bigger or more interesting? And then we have the case of Chris Bledsoe. And not only Chris Bledsoe, but if you think about it, it's his information is critical, but it is something that goes back to 2007 and 2008 and largely ignored. And now we go back and we look at his case and his experiences, and we have something that has been researched and looked into for a long time. And this is something that absolutely has to be front and center, don't you think?
Yeah, I'm a big supporter of Chris, and I was fortunate. I did an extended series of interviews with him on my radio program, which people can listen to on our channel, and he's quite remarkable. His case is remarkable, and it's another reprehensible thing, by the way, that there are still people out there right now trying to tear him down. I don't understand why they think that that's a good thing to do. When you listen to Chris talk about his story, the thing about Chris Bledsoe is that you've got this. It's weird because his story of ongoing contact is like, that's a lot for a person who's not familiar with our field to handle. Like, it's a lot, and I think Chris would be the first to tell you that. But the fact is, it really does appear to have happened. And I had to go through my own learning curve listening to these accounts and asking myself, like, do I really believe this guy? You know, that type of thing. But the fact is, I do. I absolutely do. And what you learn more and more is that there have been some very interesting high-level people who clearly are interested in Mr. Chris Bledsoe's story. So what you've got is a situation of, you've got genuine UFOs. You've got like orb-type phenomena. You've got beings that appear like apparitions of robed figures and this type of thing. All of that happens, and so it's a lot. And it's a lot to believe. But the fact is, when people go in and investigate him, they all come away strong believers because many of them have experienced things themselves. I myself have not visited Chris's home, but I think that I plan to. I think we're going to go down and pay him a visit. But I do know many, many individuals who have, or at least a few. And yeah, I think his story is quite remarkable. Quite remarkable.
I need to take a break here, Richard, and I'm not done with you. I want to continue this Chris Bledsoe conversation that we've only done 60 seconds on.
That was your strategy.
Yeah, it was. Well played. I warned you.
Well, here's the thing. I just have to tell you, I am turning into a pumpkin. It is midnight here. How about we do one more segment?
One more segment with Richard Bleepin' Dolan. Richard, that's why this audience loves you so much. Let's take a break right here. Richard Dolan. Oh, man. Richard, that was fun. And you were set up. You were set up, but...
let's do one more. I've got a mild fever. That's no lie. I'm a little tired, but we'll do one more segment, and then we'll call it a night. Okay?
We'll be right back with Richard Dolan. Stay with us.
This is Rob Halford, the Metal Guard on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Welcome back. Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Richard Bleepin' Dolan. One more segment with Richard. You can become an official Fade or Not. Just go to our membership section of JimmyChurchRadio.com. Autograph shirts, autograph hats, all that fun stuff. Private email to me. You can do the same thing with Richard. Richard, you've got a membership section over at your site, don't you? What is it?
Yes, we do. Well, we have the website is called Richard Dolan Members, and there's a lot of I have a lot of free content up there. I put things up all the time, but there's a lot of members only content that Tracy and I will upload every week. So that will be I do a weekly video podcast that's usually close to an hour every week, and on top of that, then I'll usually do additional segments of my interviews on the Richard Dolan Show, which are available only on the website. And I'll do many articles and what we call off the cuffs. So a lot of times if I'm bitching about something at the breakfast table, Tracy will stop me and say, wait, back up, let me record that. And often it's interesting enough that I'll just put it up on the site, and members of our site get to hear that too. So it's a whole different side of me that I usually will not present to the public, but also thoughts on a whole variety of things. A lot of UFO information and other things as well. So that's our site, and it's been quite active for the past couple of years. It's been going really great. I'm wonderful. And actually we started a forum on this site, which a lot of people don't realize. It was a big goal of ours to have something. There's so many brilliant people who are members of our site, and it was obvious that they needed an outlet. When you have that many smart people who really want to talk to each other, we thought, let's have a forum. And so we have a closed forum on our site that's every bit as cool as Above Top Secret, in my opinion, with every bit as many brilliant people there, but it's just for us. And so great conversations on everything under the sun there. And I'm so proud of that. And we've got a couple of great moderators as well, who this would not work without them. So there's a lot of things that we have on our site that make it a really fun little universe. On the posts that I put up with regularity, there's lots and lots of comments below. So between that and the forum itself, there's a lot of activity for the members of the site to participate in.
Man, I want to go hang out.
You do. It's actually a really fun place.
Yeah,
and we have a lot of pretty well-known people in the UFO field who are members of the site. They just come in to hang out. It's kind of neat. I really enjoy it. It's very gratifying.
Well, what I have found is that with the UFO community, the ability to unravel a situation, because there's too many smart people out there, right? Whether it's a photograph or a video or a statement or whatever it is, the UFO community, you see these people surface. They've got great memories. A lot of them are super talented in their fields. They know a lot about stuff, whether it's physics or space or cooking. It doesn't matter what,
That's right. That's right.
And when it comes to it, this is my segue back to Chris Bledsoe. When Chris Bledsoe, and you did your series, we had Chris on the show last night, as you know. And the community has examined Chris's case very critically. And I think that he has had nothing but, not all, but very positive responses to this where people have looked into his case with a magnifying glass. And I find that part pretty interesting. And when you come through the wash of the UFO community and you come out on the other side, that says a lot, doesn't it?
I think so. Well, there are always going to be critics, and there are. But yes, I think it's true. Most people who have acquainted themselves with Chris's history and the history of the sightings and encounters, yeah, they come away impressed. They come away believers, and I'm one of them. So I went in very much, years ago. I mean, I knew about him, but I didn't really talk with him. I didn't know him, and I wasn't his friend or anything like that. And I guess I would say a bit on the fence. I didn't really know what I thought about him, but years and years go by, and continually I would hear colleagues of mine, friends of ours, the people you know and people I know who would tell me that I went down there and I met with Chris and this crazy thing happened and this thing happened and that thing happened. So, yeah, you get enough of those and you realize there's something genuine about this. And then you learn that, and Chris is still very cagey about it. And I guess he has to be, but there's some very definite high level people who, they are interested in what is going on there. So I assume one day all of that will come out. I mean, I would like for it to come out, but clearly there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of there are many interested people in what's going on at his property in North Carolina. And by the way,
yes,
as I think you realized when you spoke to him, he is such just a wonderful guy to talk to. And, I ended up having a number of conversations with him on and off the record, and he is just a sweetheart of a man. And you really want things to go well for him. I ended up feeling very, protective is too strong a word, because who am I to be protective of him? But sometimes I get that, when you see someone who's having a rough time, there's that instinct to just want things to go well for someone. And I found myself feeling that for him as well. Not that he needs it, but I guess I could just say I have a lot of goodwill for him.
There is another part about this, hence the setup 2 hours ago on the show, and why I had that series of questions for you. There's another part there's two other elements to Chris's case, I'll just call it a case, that come into play here that we don't have a whole lot with other situations like this in ufology. And that is, he's got a lot of video documentation. He's got a lot of photo and images. He's got a lot of eyewitnesses. So there's that element that we discussed earlier. We have the testimony that we discussed earlier that is there. And also, the story has not changed. And I think that is what is paramount here. It hasn't gone in the other direction. And we have all of that with Chris Bledsoe, don't we?
Yeah, I think that's a really well-made point that you have there. Yes, his story has not changed to my knowledge. And yes, video. I mean, I've seen video, and I have to say, like, a lot of it looks interesting to me. I've never felt like I'm expert at analyzing all of it, or like, can I prove or debunk it? But it does look interesting to me. And definitely the fact that there's an enormous number of witnesses compared with most UFO cases that he's got. Yeah. The thing is, like, you have to wonder, is all of this UFO related, or is there something else going on? And I think he feels that there's more than that, than that is just a UFO thing. I don't know for myself, like, where I stand as to what it is he's experienced. His story about encountering the lady, as she's called. That's just, is that a UFO story? That's actually right out of centuries old encounters that people have reported over many, many centuries, encounters with what they believe was the Virgin Mary and things like this. And I'm not saying that this was that, but it has a lot of commonality to those ancient stories that go back centuries and centuries. So what is it that he's experiencing? Is it an extraterrestrial thing? There are UFO elements to his story, but there is much more than that. And that's why it's kind of hard, even now, after all this time talking with him, for me to wrap my own brain around what exactly is this man and his family experiencing. And I don't know what the answer to that is, but I do believe it's real. And I believe that these are absolutely decent, honest individuals, honest people. So, yeah, I want to hear more about their stories. I'm never not interested. I always want to hear more about what's going on with Chris Bledsoe.
Somebody just posted, I have a UFO hanging out my house as we speak. It's been there since 7 p.m. doing loops and shape-shifting. I just got updated pics. I'm freaking out, and this is out of Detroit. So, I've got images that have just come into my inbox from Detroit.
Well,
wow. See,
I had a conversation a week ago with Peter Davenport, who runs the National UFO Reporting Center.
Uh-huh.
And but Peter's a fascinating man to talk to in his own right. But this is a man who has run a website since 1994, so 26 years now, which is the leading website to receive UFO reports year in, year out. Thousands and thousands every year, 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 per year. And you know what it tells me is that on any given day, there's something interesting going on. And we're not saying all of those are genuine UFOs, but you go through those cases that come into him, and a lot of them, like a decent percentage of them, are genuinely interesting. So on any given day, you've got dozens of interesting things happening. It's really shocking. It's like, I feel like we do live in the upside down world, like where all of the things that we're told, it's like the opposite. Like we're told, oh, there's UFOs every once in a while, if at all. No, there's a very significant infrastructure of this phenomenon that I think exists. Like I have come to believe strongly that there's a significant number of them, whoever they are, living here, probably in isolation, but maybe among us as well. And they've got their own society, and they are by and large separate from us, but they do what they do. And I believe now that this is the fundamental reason why there are so many sightings all over the world. You know, we only know about the North American sightings by and large because we've got an infrastructure here to take the reports, but there's just as many going on in South America and in Europe and in Asia as well, I'm convinced, and Africa. But most of those regions don't have enough of a reporting system in place to take these down. But I think that there's a lot going on.
Yeah, and going back to Chris Bledsoe, directly talking about what you're talking about right now, is that, with Chris's case, are we talking about something that is alien or ET or off-world, or something that is a phenomena that is here that could have an ET element? Is there something else in play? I don't know. But then you go and watch that burning tree video that his son shot in the backyard, right? The burning tree videos, I should say. And I watch that, Richard. I try to be objective. I try to just not, jump in with feet first. And you watch that, and you have to back up and genuinely ask yourself, what's this about? What is going on here?
Yeah, it's powerful. It's fascinating video, and I don't know how to debunk that. So, at least in an honest way, I don't see how you can really debunk that honestly. I don't see how one can. So, well, here's the thing. We humans are smart creatures for the most part, and we've got a good ability to figure out things about this world around us, but we have our limitations, and that's not a criticism against us. It just means that we don't know things. Like our brains are organized in a certain way. We perceive space and time in a certain way. That's not to say that space and time are as we perceive them. And we have to keep reminding ourselves of that fact. And so we're in a world where we're encountering, realities. We're smart enough to detect these other realities that are just beyond our ability to comprehend. But we don't have that ability. It's like, think about your dog or a cat. They're intelligent creatures. Your dog knows you. Your dog knows a lot of things about you. Your dog can detect your emotions maybe better than a lot of other people can. And your dog has got great hearing and great sense of smell and detects things that we're not aware of. But your dog doesn't know a lot of things. Like when you leave the house to go to work, your dog doesn't know where you're going. Your dog can't know where you're going. Your dog doesn't know what the moon is. Your dog doesn't know that it's been taken out of its natural environment to live with humans and to eat dog food that's manufactured in factories and put into a can. Because he's a dog. Their brains work a certain way. And so your dog is at a certain level. You're at a bit of a higher level. And you can perceive things that your dog cannot understand. But what's at a higher level than us? There clearly must be perceptual and cognitive capabilities beyond what we are able to do in our own very excellent minds, but we've got our limits. And so I think when we're encountering, whether it's UFOs or this, let's call it paranormal phenomenon, I personally think that we're running into a phenomenon that we're not ideally equipped to understand. It doesn't mean that we can't try and that we can't make some progress, but we're running into some serious obstacles, it seems to me, and it's very possibly the limitation of our ability to perceive space and time in a certain way. So if we're able to overcome that, and maybe we can in some way. I think we actually may have some ability to, but it may not be an innate natural ability. So as long as we've got that limitation, I think we're going to struggle to understand some of these things that Chris is experiencing and other people who've had these types of experiences have had. And that's just my opinion. It's not for me to say that we'll never understand or that it's not worth trying. It's absolutely worth trying, because the UFO phenomenon is really our greatest teacher in many ways. You find that it's on the edge of so many of our areas of science and knowledge, so that we need to study it. We need, to dive in because its implications are so profound and because it's on the edge of our reality. It's on the edge of our understanding. But whether we're going to get the full grasp of it, well, I don't know about that. But it's clear to me that we really want to be studying this. It's really valuable to us, and we can learn a lot. We can still learn a lot, much more than we know now.
My schnauzer, Malcolm, just said to me, tell Dolan, I know he's an author and publisher and he lives in New York. He's full of crap. I'm just telling you, he literally just said that to me. So, I'm just passing that on. I just watched a movie that I strongly suggest you check out. It's called Horse Girl. And the movie, you get about halfway through it. I'm not going to disclose anything here, but you get about halfway through it and you get very uncomfortable, because the movie is about aliens, abductions, her parents, and she goes off into, she goes crazy. All right. She goes nuts. And it's a very uncomfortable thing to witness, to see somebody go through this type of psychosis. In the end of the movie, it's got a great ending. Okay, so you got to get through it. But what I found myself thinking, Richard, is exactly what you were just saying. You get about halfway through the movie, and I'm thinking to myself, is this how I am perceived? Because she's out there speaking to people, trying to discuss these things, and people are looking at her like she's absolutely crazy, which forces her to go crazier. Okay. Mm. And today, and I thought to myself, am I the crazy person? Right. And then I had to back up and realize about the amount of alien conversation and TV programming and movies and what's going on worldwide. Now it's openly discussed. So I'm not that crazy person, and I feel that I can discuss these subjects in a public context where we weren't able to do this before. You should watch Horse Girl. You'll understand exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, thank you for the tip. We'll look into it.
Do you feel that you can openly discuss this? Go to Home Depot and bring up UFOs at the cashier.
Pretty much all the time, because actually I do almost all the time. I mean, not really all the time, but I'm never afraid to talk about it anymore. Never. Years ago when I would fly to a conference back in 2003, 2004, back in those days, I would always sit down and never want to talk about UFOs. I'd be next to the person with their Excel spreadsheet who'd always say, well, what do you do for a living? And I really didn't want to get into. I just thought, it's too far out there. And eventually I started to break down and discuss it. Now I don't talk about it on planes because people they don't stop talking to you. Like they just want you for the rest of the flight. But like when I'm in public, when Tracy and I are out, usually shopping or if we're at grocery store or Home Depot or wherever. No, we never hesitate. You kidding? I feel like it's actually, we do a really good thing by bringing it up in a confident, knowledgeable way. Because what you find is that people have a hunger for this information. And a lot of times they don't even realize it until they confront it or it confronts them, I should say. And then they realize, my God, this is fascinating. I want to know more. And they'll realize, you see it happening, like you can watch it happening in someone's face. They get this realization, like this person is dead serious and he seems to know what he's talking about. And I want that knowledge. Like I've seen it happen countless times. So I know for a fact there's an enormous hunger out there, often by people who don't realize they're hungry until then they do. And so that's the great thing about this subject. And so for that reason, I almost never hesitate anymore. I just bring it up. That's who I am.
Yeah. I'm the same way. I was at an airport. This is many, many years ago. I'm at an airport, and we had to change equipment, right? Had to change planes. So we're waiting for another plane to come up. There's a problem with the first plane. And about an hour goes by. 2 pilots come up, and I'm standing with, 150 people at the gate. We've been there for about an hour. 2 pilots come up. And they're standing behind me, and I turned around and I said, hey, how you guys doing? He goes, we're the new crew. I said, oh, okay, cool. All right. And I said, so, you guys ever see a UFO? Right?
I love it.
I went straight there. The look that they gave me, Richard, they gave me the crazy look and just kind of smirked. It was nothing positive. But I wonder if those same 2 pilots came up to me today with the same situation and the same conversation, I think that they would say yes or no. They would engage.
Yeah, I mean, as we all know, many pilots have seen them. Many pilots. We've both, I'm sure, gotten quite a few stories from commercial pilots, private pilots, military pilots. They're all out there. They've all encountered this. I mean, not all of them, but so many of them have. So there's obviously something going on.
Yeah, I have a friend. I won't say his last name, but his first name is Steve. I've known Steve since he was, 16 years old in high school. He is now a commercial pilot for a major carrier. But I went out with Steve in a little private plane 7 years ago, and we're flying around L.A. I got to take the stick or the wheel, and I'm flying around.
Nice.
And I asked Steve, I go, man, ever see a UFO? And he goes, dude, I was, 5 years ago, I'm flying this plane that we're in right now, and I'm out over Catalina, over the Pacific Ocean. And man, this silver disc, it was lit up from the inside. It was metallic, but it was bright, lit up, glowing, flew from left to right underneath my plane and just took, and I called air traffic control and said, what's going on? They hadn't seen anything. He said, and the way that the wings are on this plane, the wings are low, not above you, right? They're low.
Yes.
So as he looked to his right, he said it was underneath the wing, and I couldn't chase it anymore. I couldn't see it. And I'm flying the plane, and I turned, and it wasn't there. He said, but I saw it, man, and it went left to right. I said, what do you say?
That's 2008.
Yeah, something like that. And he said, he said it was a flying saucer. He said it's exactly what you're thinking. It was a flying saucer. It was metallic. It was glowing, and flew underneath my plane.
And it moved. And when it did like a left to right move, like almost like a head fake, and then it just moved.
Just underneath. He thought he was going to hit it, is what he said. He said it was that close, and it flew underneath, went left to right. And he tried to follow it, looking.
It didn't zigzag or anything unusual like that?
Nope. He said something lit up to his left, caught his attention.
Okay.
He looked and right under. Awesome. It lasted for about a second. And he turns to his right, and the wing is in the way. He can't see it. So, the plane turns slowly. It's not so he turned the plane to see, and it was gone. But, this is a friend of mine. He's got nothing to gain. He's just telling me his one singular experience. But
and he's another pilot.
Yeah.
Another one. Just throw him in the pile. There's so many others just like that.
He called air traffic control. And he's he said something like, no, he has a flight log with him. And I watched him. He writes everything out, got his checklist before we take off. He's very meticulous. He's a commercial jet pilot. But he said, man, I didn't put it in my flight log. I didn't write it down.
Yeah. Fascinating. Great story.
There you go. Richard, thank you so much, my friend. So it's Richard Dolan Members? What is it?
Yeah. RichardDolanMembers.com.
There you go. Everybody go check it out. RichardDolanMembers.com.
Great site. My favorite site ever.
No, we're going to... We're going to be at Contact in the Desert in May. Are you doing anything before then?
Yes. Tracy and I are going down to Edinburgh, Texas, right near the border, for an event in mid-April. We have that listed on our site. It's a nice kind of an event. It's organized by the town there, and it's April 4th. Tracy just is standing here. She just wrote it down for me. April 4th. I was wrong about that. That's the main thing that we've got coming up. I'll see you at Contact in the Desert, and I'm sure we'll see each other in the UK later in the year.
It's going to be great. And say hi to Tracy for us, and enjoy the rest of your evening. And thank you for hanging, Richard. It's always a great conversation, my friend.
Jimmy, I loved it. I always do. Thanks for having me on. Richard
Bleepin Dolan. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, sir.
Richard Dolan. Right. It is RichardDolanMembers.com. And also, if you want to check out Richard's books, RichardDolanPress.com. The links are over at JimmyChurchRadio.com. With that, I'm going to take a quick break, and I'll come back and take your phone calls. Open lines are next. This is Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. I'll be right back. Stay with us.